The thing about humiliation is it sneaks in wearing perfume. It looks like a family celebration, sounds like laughter, and feels like glass when it lands. That's how it happened to me. Under golden chandeliers, beside a 3-tier cake, in a hall filled with people who were supposed to love me. My sister Lydia made sure everyone at her wedding knew I was the sad single one, like some moral lesson dressed in navy chiffon. She didn't just hint at it. She turned it into the theme of her day. But calling it my humiliation turned out to be her biggest mistake. Because that night, under those same warm lights, I learned revenge can look an awful lot like romance. It was a ceremony made for fairy tale magazines. Crystal chandeliers like frozen stars. Violins soft enough to make you forgive bad behavior. Champagne bubbles dancing like secrets. Every table shimmered in gold and white. But there, in my hand, a tiny piece of cardboard carried my doom, table 12, the singles table. The reject corner, parked beside the kitchen doors, where waiters darted through clouds of steam. I could almost hear Lydia's laugh in my head when I saw it. The label didn't just separate guests. It branded me, I'm Hannah, and if my last name feels irrelevant, that's because it usually is whenever Lydia's around. She always found ways to dim me down so she could glow brighter. Ever since she got engaged to Richard, her new favorite hobby had been reminding me that I was 32, single, and therefore incomplete by her calculation. Family dinners became performance art. She'd twirl her diamond ring for sparkle and sigh. Maybe you should try the apps again, Hannah. You can't be choosy forever. Time's ticking. Our mother would nod as though Lydia was handing out life lessons instead of insults, while our father busied himself pretending not to hear. And me? I smiled so tightly my jaw ached. The morning of her wedding should have been peaceful, but Lydia called with something that sounded more like a warning disguised as compassion. Hannah, sweetie, I know today might sting for you, seeing everyone so blissfully paired up, she said, each word dipped in fake sympathy. Just promise me you won't spend the night chatting up the bartender again, okay? That was my hint that the coming evening would not be an act of sisterly love. It would be theater. I just didn't yet know my part. The Grandview Manor reception hall glittered with perfection when I arrived. My dress, a rich navy I'd chosen because it made my eyes look fierce, felt like armor. But armor doesn't help much when someone has already planned the ambush. Marion, her maid of honor, greeted me with a clipboard, and the same brittle smile Lydia used when she smelled weakness. Oh, Hannah, here you are. Table 12, right this way. She said it lightly, but that number hit harder than champagne bubbles ever could. The seating area was tucked behind a pillar, beside the restless kitchen doors. My companions were a handful of Lydia's single co-workers who whispered to each other in work gossip code and our 74-year-old great-aunt Janet. Aunt Janet spent the night asking, loudly if I'd considered not being so picky, and complaining about how loud the DJ was. I answered politely, like a woman being mocked in her own dream, waiting for the night to end. Then came the introduction round, Lydia's favorite sport. She clasped my arm mid-conversation and towed me toward a sophisticated cluster of Richard's relatives. And this is my sister Hannah, she said cheerfully, curving herself around Richard like territorial decor. She's our hard-working career woman, still focused on her job instead of finding someone special. My throat tightened as the group nodded with choreographed sympathy. Richard's aunt, Mrs. Wellington, gave me the kind of smile reserved for stray animals. Oh dear, she cooed, patting my arm. Don't lose hope. My nephew met his wife at a prayer group. Lydia laughed, sharp, deliberate, the kind that cuts through confidence. Hannah's very independent, she said, stretching the word until it sounded like a diagnosis. I just haven't met the right person yet, I said. My voice felt too steady to be real. Richard's mother chimed in breezily. Well, dear, don't wait too long. My daughter did, and now she's 45 with fertility problems. A chorus of sympathetic noises followed. Every comment was a needle wrapped in politeness. By the time the photographer came around asking if I had a +1 for the family photo, I could already taste metal on my tongue. It was like being stabbed with glittering silverware, everyone smiling while twisting. The next coup de grace arrived during the bouquet toss, when the DJ's cheerful voice invited all the single ladies. I tried hiding behind a pillar. It didn't work. Marion spotted me winking cruelly. Come on, Hannah, maybe your luck changes tonight. Next thing I knew, I was shoved into a ring of 20-somethings squealing like game show contestants. Lydia looked at me, paused just long enough for everyone to feel it, and then flung the bouquet in the exact opposite direction. A blonde named Chloe caught it. Lydia squealed theatrically and shouted, "Looks like Hannah will be waiting a little longer." Laughter rippled. Some people looked at me the way you look at a person whose zipper's down. Half pity, half relief it isn't them. My face burned. I retreated to table 12, heartbeat clanging louder than the band. For a second, I considered leaving, disappearing before her victory smile reached me. I was fishing my purse off the chair when a low voice brushed my ear. "Act like you're with me." I turned, startled. A man I hadn't noticed before stood there, impossibly poised in a charcoal suit that looked sculpted for him. Tall, 6'2", maybe 6'3", with sharp cheekbones softened by kind eyes. The kind of presence that made silence bend around it. "Excuse me?" I managed. He gave a polite half-smile. "Your sister spent 10 straight minutes telling my colleague about how worried she is that you'll die alone," he said. "I thought I'd help even the scoreboard." He slid effortlessly into the seat beside me. "Hope you don't mind." For the first time all evening, I stopped shrinking. Across the room, Lydia was still gesturing animatedly in my direction, oblivious. "You don't mind a bit of pretending, do you?" he asked. Tone light but eyes serious. Speechless, I shook my head. Pretending sounded wonderful. "I'm William," he said after a moment, extending his hand. "Richard's cousin from Boston, the black sheep of the family. And you're Hannah, the sister desperately in need of saving, according to tonight's gossip." A laugh escaped me before I could catch it. "That's me, the evening's charity case." "Well, not for long," he said, flashing a grin that could have melted glass. With casual grace, he draped his arm along the back of my chair, his shoulder brushing mine as if we'd known each other forever. Immediately, I felt heads turning. The air thickened with new speculation. Conversation tables away stuttered and shifted toward us. Lydia, mid-discussion with the planner, froze mid-gesture. Her polished smile faltered when she spotted us leaning close. Her gaze sharpened like a knife. She murmured an excuse, lifted her gown slightly, and began her approach, her wedding dress train trailing behind like a declaration of war. "Hannah," she said lightly, her tone just a shade higher than usual. "I didn't realize you knew William." "Old friends," William replied smoothly before I could breathe. He laid his hand gently over mine. "Lost touch for a while, but, these things happen." His confidence was so natural it almost convinced me too. Lydia's mouth tightened, amusement fleeing her face. "Really? Hannah never mentioned you." I try to keep my private life private, I said, finally finding my voice and some of my confidence. "You know how I am about work-life balance." The irony wasn't lost on me. Lydia had spent the entire evening broadcasting my lack of a love life, and now she was fishing for details about a relationship that didn't exist. "How wonderful," Lydia said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. "How long have you two been reconnecting?" "Long enough," William said, with a smile that gave away nothing and everything. As Lydia walked away, clearly frustrated by the lack of information, William turned to me with a conspiratorial whisper. "She looks like she just bit into a lemon," he said. I couldn't help but smile. She's not used to not knowing everything about my life or having me upstage her in any way. "Good," he said. "Let's keep her guessing." For the next hour, William played the part perfectly. He brought me drinks from the bar, laughed at my jokes, and touched my hand just enough to make our connection believable. But more than that, he actually listened when I talked. He asked about my work in marketing, my love of hiking, and my recent trip to Ireland. "You're not what I expected," he said, during a quiet moment between songs. "What did you expect?" "Based on your sister's description, someone desperate and pathetic," he said bluntly. "Instead, I'm sitting with someone intelligent, funny, and honestly. I can't figure out why you're single." "Because I have standards," I said without thinking. He laughed, a genuine warm sound that made something inside my chest loosen. "Good for you." By this point, Lydia was openly staring at our table. I could see her whispering to Marion, who kept glancing over at us with obvious curiosity. Richard's family members. who had peed me earlier, were now looking at William with interest and approval, clearly recognizing his social status and wondering how I'd managed to land someone so obviously successful. The revenge was already sweeter than I'd imagined. But William wasn't done. When the band started playing slow songs, he stood up and extended his hand with a confident smile. "Dance with me," he said. It wasn't a question. On the dance floor, with his hand on my waist and mine on his shoulder, I felt the eyes of every guest who had offered me unsolicited dating advice. But instead of feeling exposed, I felt protected. William moved with the kind of natural rhythm that suggested he'd grown up taking dancing lessons, and being in his arms felt surprisingly natural. "Your sister is watching," William murmured as we swayed to the music. "I know," I said. "She looks like she's going to explode. Mission accomplished." I looked up at him, this stranger who had given me back my dignity with a simple gesture. "Almost." That's when Lydia made her move. "Mind if I cut in?" she said, appearing beside us with Richard in tow. Her wedding smile was stretched tight across her face, and I could see the calculation behind her eyes. "Actually, yes," William said politely but firmly. "We're having a moment." Lydia's face went through several expressions before settling on forced brightness. "Of course, I just wanted to say how happy I am that Hannah finally found someone. We were all so worried about her." "Were you?" William asked, his tone neutral, but his eyes sharp. "Because from what I've observed tonight, it seems like you've been more interested in broadcasting her single status than supporting her." The directness of his statement left Lydia speechless for a moment. Richard shifted uncomfortably beside her, clearly sensing the tension, but not understanding its source. We just want what's best for Hannah," Lydia stammered, her composure cracking. "Then maybe treat her with the respect she deserves, instead of using her love life as entertainment for your wedding guests," William said calmly. I had never seen Lydia look so rattled. Her perfect wedding confidence was completely shattered, and for the first time Alavenning, she was the one who looked small. "I don't know what Hannah told you, but she didn't have to tell me anything," William interrupted. "I have eyes. I can see how you've been treating her all evening." Richard finally stepped in, clearly uncomfortable with the public nature of the confrontation. Maybe we should let them get back to dancing. As they walked away, Lydia's composure was completely destroyed. I could see her frantically whispering to Marion, probably trying to figure out who William was, and how I'd managed to land someone so obviously out of my league. "That felt really good," I admitted as we continued dancing. "We're not done yet," William said with a smile that made my heart skip. For the rest of the evening, William made sure I was never alone. When dinner was served, he requested that we be moved to a better table. Something about his dietary restrictions requiring him to be closer to the kitchen. The staff, clearly knowing who Richard's family was, accommodated us immediately. Our new table was front and center, where everyone could see us laughing and talking like a real couple. Lydia's friends, who had ignored me earlier, suddenly wanted to chat and meet William. Richard's relatives, who had pied me, now treated me with newfound respect and curiosity about mysterious boyfriend. Mrs. Wellington, who had suggested church groups earlier, now wanted to know all about William's family background. When she learned he was a successful tech entrepreneur with an MBA from Harvard, her attitude toward me changed completely. "Hannah, you dark horse," she said with genuine admiration. "You never mentioned you were seeing someone so accomplished." But the final act of revenge came during the garter toss. When Richard prepared to throw the garter to all the single men, William stepped forward with the confidence of someone who belonged exactly where he was. "Wait," Lydia called out desperately. "William, you're not single." William looked at me, then back at Lydia with a mysterious smile. "Actually, I am. Hannah and I are taking things slow, getting reacquainted." The garter landed directly in his hands. Whether by luck or Richard's aim, I'll never know. But the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, especially Lydia. According to tradition, William was supposed to place the garter on the leg of whoever caught the bouquet. But that young cousin Chloe had left early. "Looks like we need a volunteer," the DJ announced. William looked at me with a question in his eyes. I nodded. The crowd cheered as I sat in the chair, and William knelt before me, sliding the garter onto my leg with a gentleness that felt surprisingly intimate for an act of pretense. The moment felt charged with possibility, and I found myself wondering if the chemistry between us was entirely fake. Lydia's face was a mask of barely controlled fury as she watched her single, pathetic sister become the center of positive attention at her own wedding. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, William walked me to my car. The parking lot was quiet, away from the watchful eyes of wedding guests and my family. "Thank you," I said, finally alone with him. "I know tonight was just an act, but you saved me from the most humiliating experience of my life." "What makes you think it was just an act?" he asked, his expression serious. My heart stopped. Because you don't even know me." "I know enough," he said, stepping closer. "I know you're kind even when people don't deserve it. I know you're strong enough to endure a night of humiliation without fighting back. I know you're beautiful inside and out. And I know your sister is an idiot for not seeing how lucky she's to have you as family." I felt tears, threatening, but this time they weren't from humiliation. "William, I know this started as a rescue mission," he said, "but somewhere between the first dance and now, it stopped being pretend for me." He handed me a business card with his personal number written on the back in elegant handwriting. "If you want to see me again, not for revenge, not to prove a point, just because you want to, call me." I took the card with shaking hands. "What if I want to call you tonight?" He smiled, that same confident smile that had first caught my attention. "Then I'll answer." Months later, William and I were officially dating. 6 months after that, we moved in together, and exactly 1 year after Lydia's wedding, he proposed to me in the same hotel where we'd first met. Lydia's reaction to our engagement announcement was everything I could have hoped for. The sister who had spent years making me feel inadequate for being single was now forced to watch me plan a wedding with a man who clearly adored me and who came from an even wealthier family than Richard. But their revenge wasn't in proving Lydia wrong about my worthiness of love. It was in realizing that I didn't need her validation anymore. William's respect and genuine affection had shown me what I deserved, and I was never going to settle for less again. Our wedding was smaller than Lydia's, but infinitely more joyful. Instead of using the occasion to humiliate anyone, we celebrated with people who genuinely wanted us to be happy. Lydia gave a speech as my maid of honor, something she'd insisted on despite our complicated history. She talked about how happy she was to see me find love, how William was clearly perfect for me, how she'd always known I'd find someone special. The revisionist history was breathtaking, but I didn't care anymore. I had something more valuable than her approval. I had someone who saw my worth from the very beginning. Looking back, Lydia's wedding was the worst night of my life. Her cruelty showed me how I'd been allowing people to treat me, but it also led me to William. Without her humiliation, I never would have been vulnerable enough to accept help from a stranger. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up giving us exactly what we need to change our lives. Lydia wanted to make me feel small and pathetic. Instead, she created the circumstances for me to meet my future husband. The irony is perfect. In trying to prove I was unlovable, she delivered me directly to the love of my life. If this story reminded you that the best revenge is living well, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories of karma and unexpected love. Have you ever had someone's cruelty backfire spectacularly? Share your story in the comments. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor about justice, and sometimes that humor leads to happiness ever after.